Welcome everybody. We're talking about social venture number 10 today, which is Skylark Works. First of all, I want to introduce the team. So first of all, can I introduce Katie?
Hi, I'm Katie. I'm the Managing Director here at Skylark.
Jonathan?
I'm Jonathan Black. I'm Director of the Careers Service and I'm the Chair of Skylark.
And finally, John.
Hi, I'm John and I'm a Director.
Okay, so Skylark was our 10th social venture, and I was wondering, I don't know who to ask it to. So what is Skylark? What is it about? What does it do, first of all?
So I think, we would probably best describe ourselves as a purpose-led consultancy. And, we provide very practical business support to organizations that deliver positive social impact. And so, what that means in terms of the support that we provide is that it may be delivering really practical outcome-focused projects. As a kind of typical consultancy would, but it's also about making pan-sector connections and the wonderful things that happen as a result of that, and just sharing helpful guidance and support. And, I think really all of that comes under the goal of helping to grow sustainable and scalable organizations that ultimately are, furthering positive social impact. And so what that kind of practically means in terms of who we work with is that it's typically charities and social enterprises, but we also work with commercial organizations as well, looking at how they can evolve and develop their kind of social purpose programs.
Okay, that's a great introduction to the concept. I was wondering if you could turn to Jonathan now and ask it, so where did this concept start? How did we get to this point?
Just before I answer that, I'm going to add to what Katie was saying.
Oh, sorry.
This is a university spin-out, and that's really important to us, that there are, and it's not just that the university has a shareholding, which it does, and it's not just because I'm a director of the career service of the university, it's because we really want to make solid connections and benefit in both directions, academics and students and the clients that we work with. So Katie was talking earlier about an example of our first client where we've got a postdoc and a DPhil student working on the project, being paid they'll be learning consulting skills and adding real value to the client. And we want to do more of that as we go along. So it's not just a sort of paper connection, but we want to build career type connections between the two organizations. Where did it come from? About a year ago, I came back again across John, who was then available, and encouraged him to come and work with the careers service for a day a week. And at the time, we didn't really know what was going to come out of it, but we thought great things would come, even if we couldn't see them in the fog at the time. John introduced us to a lot of companies that have brought us some of our Oxford Strategy Challenge programs, where teams of students work remotely and virtually all over the country now, thanks to lockdown, on providing real consulting skills. But gradually during that period, around sort of March, April, May, this idea was emerging from the fog. And then we thought there actually could be some merit here. And after a number of conversations with outsiders, and then bringing Katie on board to actually turn it into reality and to drive the what do we do on Monday morning to make it happen, we really started meeting in earnest in about June, I would say. And then, as you know, Mark, thanks to you and OUI and the very great flexibility we had and help, we were launching in as soon as December.
Yeah, so it's a record for me personally, anyway, getting it through that quickly. But we want to do is talk about Skylark today, which is it's your opportunity to say what it is that you're doing. So maybe it might be worth spending a little bit of time talking about, well, what does those early sort of contracts, services that you're providing, what does it actually look like? What does it practically look like?
Katie, I think.
Yeah, of course. So, the first project that we're working on is with a charity called Team Margot, and they campaign to raise awareness of the need for more blood, organ, stem cell and bone marrow donors. They very tragically lost their 2-year-old daughter to blood cancer. And Team Margot was the kind of charity that incredibly came together to support others and help others out of that awful tragedy. The work that we're doing for them is an impact evaluation project. Mark, as you know, impact is this incredibly hot topic. It's a massive buzzword out there now. Everybody needs to be able to, measure their impact. And I think, what we're doing with Team Margot, because they're a relatively small charity, they haven't thought about impact evaluation holistically before. But what we're doing with them is to say, right, we're going to take a very human-centered, beneficiary-led approach to understanding your impact. And we're going to go out and talk to all of the beneficiaries that you have across, quite an impressive network, actually, in terms of who they support. And we're working with, as Jonathan mentioned earlier, we're working with 2 research assistants from the University of Oxford. So one of them is a master's student, Stephanie, and Rosa has just finished her postdoc. And they're kind of leading the charge on all of the, the surveys and the interviews and the focus groups that we're doing with Team Margot's beneficiaries. So that's the kind of main project we've started on. That's a 3-month project that began in January. And then I think it's worth touching on the kind of support element that we provide as well. So, one example of that, and I'm going to ask John to share some more because he does a lot of this, and a lot of the connections are John's as well. But one good example is that last year I joined the interview panel for Kidney Research UK. So, Jonathan, with his amazing experience in the career service, kindly helped with all of the kind of shaping of the interviews and the interview questions for kidney research. And then, I joined the interview panels so that they had another perspective and another kind of viewpoint on their panel. So again, completely different type of support. We have another charity, Hello World. They provide online educational resources and internet connectivity to some of the most marginalized communities around the world in places like Nepal and Uganda. And again, providing kind of ongoing support and guidance to them as well. And John, do you want to add kind of some of the things that you're doing?
Yeah, sure. Well, kidney research is a good place to start, I suppose, in that I sit on the business advisory group, which looks at alternative funding mechanisms. One of the things that particularly science-based research charities are keen to do is to be able to look at sort of commercial exploitation opportunities in order to improve their own sustainability. So, I'm involved with the group that sits and advises on that. So that's part of an ongoing work. And I suppose that references back into the whole Skylark network. And it may be worth us telling you a little bit about how that's come about. For the 6 years prior to 2019, I worked at Woodford Investment Management, where I set up a charitable program, which was in many respects more akin to private philanthropy, which focused very heavily around the core costs of charity supporting, as we described it, the business of charity. Lots of charitable donations are very focused on the beneficiaries, and we focused on the organizations and trying to help them become sustainable. Woodford is where Katie and I first met. When the Woodford business hit its much publicized difficulties, that program finished, and I was left with a large legacy of goodwill, which Neil Woodford was very happy for me to try and make something of. I thought it would be a great shame if all the work that we'd done to build a program just went to waste. Indeed, that was, I suppose, in the back of my mind at the end of 2019 and into 2020 was, how can I find a home for that? I can't tell you that the minute that Jonathan Black and I sat down and had a cup of tea in Banbury Road that I was thinking this is the new home. But I think, as Jonathan said, through the fog, we thought, well, actually, there is an opportunity here. And that's essentially, I suppose, our kind of hinterland of charitable contacts comes from there, which is why I think we've been able to get off to a very quick start in terms of our impact. So there were 2 parts to my job at Woodford. One was the obvious part of the job, which was distributing cash to charitable causes. But the second part of the job, which I think is the nub of it really, was all the connectivity, all the interactions between interested parties. And we built up a very significant community and following, I think, which is what, in a way, Skylark has inherited and what we hope to build on.
So I think a great story, and yeah, obviously we briefly met over the course of the last couple of years as well at the various Woodford events as well. So we're set up now. You're our newest social venture out the door. So what are you going to spend the next year doing, and what help do you need from others to sort of accelerate things?
So I think, and I'm going to hand this to John in a moment, but I think what we have is an amazing community, as John just said. So we have this wonderful community of charities and social ventures or social enterprises, but also private sector organisations as well that we know. And people have been incredibly supportive in lending their advice and insights and experience to help us grow. I think we will have no shortage of charitable clients, particularly given the backdrop that we're all facing right now. And it's worth explaining that our model for our charity work is that we can deliver our charity work on a pro bono basis, because we look to get sponsorship from corporates and philanthropists to deliver that work. And I think what that model does is that it addresses a lot of the challenges that you see with pro bono work, where often there's a lack of accountability. It's really hard to drive pace and drive performance because people are doing it out of the goodness of their heart in their free time. But it also, from a corporate perspective, as a corporate sponsor or a philanthropic sponsor, rather than just donating financial support to an organization, through sponsoring kind of project delivery, you're able to actually support the delivery of really practical outcomes and put skills and experience into an organization as well, which I think is sometimes something that's missing. So one of the kind of big things, of course, as with every organization, I'm sure everyone says this, is revenue is going to be a big piece for us. So securing sponsorship is going to be really important so that we can deliver pro bono projects for charities. And I think that element of our work is really important to us, because we want to be as accessible as possible. We don't want to find that charities can't get access to our services because we have to charge a fee for that. We want that kind of access, and that inclusivity is really vital. So, sponsorship is going to be a really important piece for us. And also commercial work. So, the other kind of key revenue stream, of course, will be taking on commercial work so that we can grow the organization, but also kind of almost subsidize then some of the pro bono work that we do as well, so that Skylark can support that. And I'll let John talk a bit more about that in a moment as well. And I think for me, the other kind of key piece is going to be finding really high caliber associates to deliver the work for our clients. So the model that we have is that we work with some kind of independent associates, so independent consultants essentially, who we support and who go out and deliver work for our clients. And that's often supplemented, as you saw with Team Margot, by some amazing kind of bright young minds from the University of Oxford as well. So I think that'll be another big thing for us is building out that associate network so that we've got the capacity to take on additional work. There's definitely no shortage of charity clients out there for us. We were on a call with a great charity over in San Francisco last night. They're called Cruise for a Cause, and they're a group of volunteer kind of media professionals. They're film producers. They come together to create short form films for charities that otherwise wouldn't have any ability to get their story out there, and would never normally have access to that kind of creative talent. And again, there's so much that we want to do to support them. Every day we're having kind of wonderful conversations with charities. So I think that side of things, will be absolutely covered on. But and I'll let John and Jonathan add. But for me, I think the big ones are going to be, as always, revenue and securing revenue, and then building out our associate network.
I think last week is a great example where, in terms of what we need, we started with a meeting on Monday with Christine Fairchild, who runs the alumni office, as you know. And so there's that angle to work with the 300,000 Oxford alumni to make them aware of the programme and let them get involved in whatever the way they want. They might be senior in charities, they might want to be involved financially to help with sponsorship, they might want to introduce us to people or to be associates on the project. So that's a great start in that direction. And then later in the week, completely over the transom, I think because Skylark exists now, a very old contact of mine came forward, really seeking help on fundraising for their their commercial plans. And again, we can leverage our network and become part of that and deliver some of the social action that goes with investment these days. So, and that just came up in the first week of the year, and we thought, crikey, okay, I thought it was going to be a quiet start, but off we go. And indeed, we have 2 more calls after this that are in similar and disparate veins. So they're sort of examples. John, what do we need?
Well, for me, I think we need believers, is what I would say. I mean, it's really interesting, Mark. You're aware of the fact that obviously we are the beneficiaries of a reasonably significant 6-figure investment sum from an individual who's kind of backed this, and I think what is wonderful about that is that person recognizes the impact that can be had in the space and wants to support what I was referring to earlier, which is the business of charitable endeavor. It's actually helping organizations to become sustainable. It's less about the emotional end, which we all know a lot about and we all receive. And that does take a little bit of belief. And I think for corporate sponsors, for instance, the mechanism that we're talking about, funding certain pieces of work, corporate sponsorship or individual philanthropy, it does take a little bit of belief to say this money is going to work. It's easy to see the impact if you can go and count the children who are having the bowls of food or whatever it is in front of you. It's less easy to get hold of the impact that organizations like us will have. But at a time like this, where we're going to see a huge amount of consolidation and activity in the sector, expedited by what's been happening as a result of the pandemic, I think it's a really, really good use of both corporate sponsorship money and private philanthropic money. And I just hope that there will be some early believers will come to the party that will allow us to, pardon the sort of spiritual language here, spread the gospel a bit, because I think that's what will create the flywheel effect then that will allow the sort of growth. And I think a final point from me, I think the way that we've been set up in terms of the kind of technology and so on means that we have capacity to scale our operations. And that would be a wonderful thing. I mean, this should be a very successful and meaningful venture, I think. And it will be a grave disappointment, if we don't do that. But we will need to have some people who say, I'm really, really keen to get on this bus with these guys, and that will help drive it. So believers for me is what it's all about.
Yeah, well, I'll absolutely support you in that. So the last question I've got for you is, where do you see yourselves in 5 or 10 years' time? Where do you see Skylark in 5 or 10 years' time? Maybe that's a better one to ask.
Yeah, if it's a personal one, I was going to say, hopefully alive and not in a cave.
I don't know. It'd be really interesting actually to see what we all say, because we haven't really talked about this. I think for me, it's really just about, for granted, all of us hope that Skylark is still here in 5 or 10 years' time. I think it's worth saying, we're as an early stage venture that just launched, that's something that we all hope for. It would be great to be a a sustainable self-funding organization that that has reached scale, but not, I think, not scale at such a magnitude that, your kind of purpose and values or your culture are anytime compromised. I think, we want to grow in a very kind of organic and evolutionary way, it's fair to say. And I think for me, as cliched as it sounds, it's just to know that we're doing something that has made a positive difference, that has had a positive social impact. And, I know that is a kind of a bit of a cliche, but I think for me, that's what's most important. I spent 10 years working in financial services, and I always used to say that while my roles were intellectually challenging and stimulating, they weren't particularly fulfilling, and they didn't feel particularly meaningful. And for me, Skylark is the way that we can deliver something that really can have a positive impact. And so, that's what success looks like for me. It's not a metric. It's simply that. But it'll be great to see what Jonathan and John think too.
So one way to answer the question is, what will it feel like over the next 5 to 10? And as Katie says, we want something that, it's going to be valuable and useful and is fun and people we want to work with. I think I know we have all worked in organizations where you think, well, the money's good, but I've sold half of my soul, but I've compromised because I needed to at this point, blah, blah, blah. But now we've reached saying, a bit like we see with lots of undergraduate students now, are saying, no, I want to do something worthwhile. And I think the pandemic has brought that home to quite a lot of people, to say, it's not the money, it's doing something worthwhile that's sustainable, addresses, I don't know, climate crisis or water crisis or what have you. So that's what it'll feel like, that we are going to pick and choose. And I'm sure we all hear this from lots of companies. We will pick and choose. And there will be some difficult decisions along the way where someone comes and says, well, why don't you work with us on this? And we'll say, well, no, that doesn't actually fit what we want to do. So I hope we get to the stage where we're resilient and have enough resources to say, that is not what we want to do. My experiences from the past in other worlds have shown the moment you compromise, you're lost. You have to be really clear that this is what we're sticking to. And if that means we lose something along the way, then so be it. But at a personal level, as you know, Mark, the employer justified retirement age means I have time. There's a limit on how long I can be a director of the career service in the university, but I need something to go on after that. I'm not just going to stop. So I'm looking for something, definitely for 5 to 10 years that will keep me busy as we go on past a university career.
John, is there anything you want to add to that?
Well, three things. From a boy who grew up in a Welsh nonconformist background, you'd expect three things with all beginning with the same letter. So for Skylark, I would say secure, sustainable, and successful. Secure financially, sustainable for the long term, and successful in terms of the things that the others have talked about, in terms of the impact that we have on the community that we serve, the enjoyment that we get from delivering it, and the sense of meaning that delivers in the lives of ourselves and the people that we serve.
Well, I think it's a great company, and thank you all for telling me all about it, and hopefully we'll be able to bring in a lot more help and support for you over the coming months.